Hey, it's Armin with Attract. At Attract Advisors, we offer accounting advisory, tax advisory, as well as financial management services. We're lucky enough to work with very many hardworking, talented entrepreneurs across many different industries. Many of these individuals are world-class in their sphere and have great stories to tell. This is our way of highlighting their accomplishments and their insights, and we hope you enjoy these conversations.
Hey everybody, welcome back to our next episode of Kickin Assets. Today I'm joined by my dear friend, fellow entrepreneur, and our EOS Implementer, Toby Massengale. Toby, thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, John.
So Toby, I knew about you and your company and EOS, and really through mutual friends is kind of how we were able to connect. And it's just really been, an amazing ride since then. I know you do a ton of podcasts, and there's a lot of really good information out there kind of, coming up on your history and just the very eclectic things that you've done over the years. But for our listeners, could you just very, very briefly give kind of a rundown of who is Toby prior to, say, starting your first job?
Yeah, sure. Raised here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Went to high school at Episcopal. Tried to make a run at college. I think, mainly because that's what we're all kind of taught, led to believe that's what we're supposed to do, and it didn't stick. I guess the last time I tried, I wound up taking my tuition money, and I went to Greece for a while with the woman who happened to become my first wife, mother of my daughter. And so that was how I bowed out of that chapter of my life. And
on the Patty G show, you guys went deep into that. Patrick Grimion's a good friend of ours, fellow CPA. Prepping, I've watched your other podcast, but in prepping for this, I watched it again. And there's a really awesome story about the details around that. So you guys go listen to the Patty G show. But you said something, and you and I have talked about this before, kind of growing up in Baton Rouge and, going to Episcopal. And I mean, there's been a lot of talent come out of that small school, over the years, especially in your era. So can you kind of talk about what was it like there in that environment? And is it just happenstance? What do you make of the fact that there's so many people who have been successful coming out of there, and maybe go into those?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of privilege there. I was always a bit of an outsider. A lot of those kids, started early on in school together, and that friendship that developed, they knew one another, they'd grown up together. But man, I don't know. In our community, maybe the choices are a bit limited. And so it just winds up being a place that you can, that you can send your kids where they're going to get, a good education.
A lot of exposure too.
A lot of exposure. Maybe not. I was in public school up until the 6th grade. I remember one semester, I had to go, all of my homework for the year had gotten stolen, so I had to go buy my homework back from the various channels that you have to go to when that kind of thing happens. You know what I mean? I got in one fight, I knocked the dude out, and then nobody really messed with me after that, but that was the environment that I existed in public school. Completely different. Never saw a fight when I was at Episcopal. And so there was that, but then most of those kids are going to go to college somewhere. No one that was in my graduating class of 75 went to LSU, or at least started out that way. They all went away to school. Yeah, and maybe they eventually started or came back. But, and so there is that. But then how do you account for the entrepreneurs? I don't know that the school itself was responsible for that.
It's more of just like a meeting ground, right? Like where, successful people send their kids, and so it just attracts other successful kids and people. And and I mean, talk about though, like the talent that's come out of there, right? So isn't Todd Graves like somewhere around your age? Or your brother's
he's
maybe?
Closer to my brother's age. I mean, what an amazing story. And I remember, I took his sister out on a couple of dates, and I just remember Todd being around, and he was, a little bit of, of a little brother, kind of annoying. We used to help his dad out doing weekend projects. He'd get some of the football players to come over that, I guess he knew through his daughter and her relationships. And Todd would be there and, kind of standing behind his dad and, trying to, be the boss. And so pretty aggravating, but, you got to respect, obviously, what he's done and the way he's done it, the way he, conducts himself. Pretty cool.
So when I was at Postal Weight, Raising Cane's was like one of our biggest clients, for financial statement audits. And so we'd go up they had just moved to Dallas at that time. So we'd go to their RSO, their restaurant support office, their headquarters out there, and just get immersed in their culture and how they set goals and like what is the upbeat culture and positivity and just like a bunch of alphas, but who can still get along. Yeah. And I mean, from what I understand, they moved out there because of the hotbed of talent, right? Like, Dallas is a lot more of a desirable place to live than Baton Rouge, I guess, to many people, probably me included. Yeah. But I think that, having to make those tough moves, kind of against the grain, because I remember like politically moving a Baton Rouge company out of Baton Rouge was a big deal. But I've always looked up to him, respected the heck out of him and his brand. Every time there's like a documentary or a podcast, like I listen to all of them. And I actually ran into him at the Clemson game. LSU played Clemson in week 1, and he was just the nicest guy. Nicest guy, like no security or anything. Like he was just like one of the guys. And so, I feel like it's an amazing story for him as an entrepreneur and all entrepreneurs that really come out of Baton Rouge, because it's like, it shows you what's possible. Yeah. And I think that there's this sentiment out there that, anybody can do whatever they want to if they put their mind to it. And I think that's true, but I think the first step to that is exposure to it. And I think that what he and other Baton Rouge entrepreneurs have been able to do is to show those that are looking for it, really what's possible.
Yeah, I think that the prerequisite, and I've gone on record before to say, the number one prerequisite to owning your own business is having a screw loose. Yeah. But I guess seriously, it's about grit, right? My dad used to say, get up out of bed every day and don't ask too many questions. And what he meant by that is, don't wonder why this is happening to you when the going gets tough. You keep pushing along. And, like in Todd's story, I mean, there was some low moments when his early partners kind of pulled out and kind of left him standing alone. And, he had a decision to make and he pushed on. And I think that, you got to have that.
And you and I were talking on the phone a couple days ago, and one of the things that you said, and it kind of reminds me about what we're talking about right now, and I'm going to butcher it, so I want you to repeat it, but it's something along the lines of like, money just exposes, who you really are as a person.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like, take Todd again. I mean, he's worth more than $20 billion, like worth more than Donald Trump, I think, but like just still so down to earth. I mean, for you, I know in what you're doing right now as an EOS implementer, and we'll get into that in just a minute, but you're always around high performers, alphas, like very successful people, financially. Are there any traits that you can really look at other than grit of what you've just said, of like what makes those really good people successful and able to produce more goodness basically out of them?
Great question. I think at some point, as an entrepreneur, and certainly in the early days, you feel the weight of the world on your shoulders because it is, right? And I think that when it comes to breaking out, making it to the next level, you have to, I guess for lack of a better word, you got to slow down a little bit and begin to pull folks within your circle of influence, say inside your company, right? That have strengths where your weaknesses are, that are aligned with the same values, right? Because if their strengths are your weaknesses, there's going to be, opportunities where they know better than you. So the bedrock that's got to be built on is trust, right? So you got to be able to trust the people that you have brought in, and put them in a position, and create a culture where you can benefit from their influence. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and trusting other people, you also have to be trustworthy. And I think being trustworthy is a sign of being a good person, because you're going to get found out. And
absolutely.
And I think that inability to trust, at least in my experience, is kind of a symptom of something that's a little bit more severe. Like maybe some level of like insecurity in yourself, that you don't necessarily trust yourself.
Right.
And so
that's right.
I'm curious, like, have you been surprised as an EOS implementer and really getting to know owners and founders like very intimately? Have you been surprised at levels of insecurity when you really get to know them?
Sure. I mean, they are vulnerabilities, and I guess because of the fierceness that you have to sort of adopt in order to push through, especially in the early days and launching a startup business. Maybe it comes off as feeling like softening a little bit, to be what some folks call vulnerable, and being vulnerable in the room with folks that you're working with that look up to you. Man, that's hard stuff. But it's essential if you want a successful organization.
And so I feel like in my industry, and I think it's the same in yours, is that you're very often faced with resistance, right? Because, maybe you're changing the way that things are done or the way that things are tracked. And is dealing with resistance something that you've always been good at? Do you find yourself getting better at it? And how would you coach up someone in dealing with resistance?
Yeah. Well, what's that African proverb that says, if you want to get there fast, go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. I think that, look, whenever I first started my business, I thought that the key to being successful, that I would have a great business if we were great at landscaping, right? And pushing and shoving and dragging, folks to get there. I had to learn, I guess probably, and it was a hard lesson to learn that that's not the way to do it. So, getting in a room with your team and getting everybody on the same page, right? Pushing through the resistance in the room, right? So that you guys can then leave that room and be oneness with your teamness. That's the smart way to, if you want to call it fight resistance, right? Is to make it go away. It didn't mean that you guys, and if you have a healthy team, you won't have healthy debate. And it all goes back to that bedrock of trust, right? That you build that on. Everybody on the team sharing the same core values with their different talents.
So I feel like leadership is of the forefront of any successful business. And I'm curious for you, you're implementing EOS. A lot of times it, starts with the leader. And there are things that the leader likes to do and that they don't like to do. Do you find that the leaders in general are open to basically making adjustments? Or is it something that, like, if they're open-minded going in, they're going to stay open-minded? Like, have you seen a closed mind turned open mind as part of the EOS process at the leadership level?
Yes. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes a while. And I think, leaders have to first be open to trust, and then trust has to be built before they are able to welcome in, and recognize that, where their weaknesses may lie, they find the strength, and then that they trust that, and that just, it takes time. The best leader is the self-aware leader, the one that knows himself as best they can. And so I find that the best leaders that I work with are the ones that understand what they don't know. But that takes a little bit of age and a little bit of experience, right, to get there. So just leadership is a constantly growing evolution, right, of self-discovery, understanding what your weaknesses are and accepting them when you find them, learning, how to build a team and look for folks who, maybe are better at things than you are doing certain things, but that fit a certain seat in your organization a little bit better than you could. It takes a lot of courage, but that moment when you understand and are willing to accept that you don't have to be the smartest guy in the room, it's a big milestone to pass, but it's essential to move. It's essential to grow in your organization, right, where you want to get to.
Yeah, and I've seen instances where weaknesses of leaders or like perceived leaders become quite apparent, and then someone else in the organization is able to step up and lead in certain, of those areas of weakness, right? And I think, like, to an egomaniac leader, that could be a bit jarring. And so have you seen, or not even necessarily with your clients, but of your friends and your network, instances where a leader would basically let go and someone else in the team will pick up the slack, and it turns out being far better than what it was before, and the leader almost comes to recognize that, okay, like, this is how it was supposed to be?
Yeah, I see it, in every session, in every room. And it, sometimes it happens and they don't see it. So it really is, obviously, it's everybody's different. CEOs are like snowflakes. They're going to recognize that some sooner, some later. Maybe it has. Yeah, it's a great question. Like, does it have to do with the pain and suffering that they've experienced in their life up to that point? I don't know. But whatever that life path is, yeah. The quicker you can recognize that and sometimes seeing it in action is the best way to understand and trust it. But the quicker that you can get there, the better leader you become, the stronger team you're going to have, the more likely successful you're going to be. Mm-hmm. Is that?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, both of us in what we do, we're dealing with people who have put their life's work, into their company. And at the end of the day, they're still a human and they have their own, personal goals. And one thing that I've really learned over the years is how you could have a wildly successful producing company, and you can have a founder or an owner who is like also a huge consumer. And so it just becomes this flywheel of producing and consuming, and you really never feel like you're getting ahead.
Yeah.
Or you're, whether it's your net worth, or more importantly, like the quality time that you have outside of your business. That's one look. The other look is, you've got this heavy producer, and these people are just never consuming. And, they, for one, are very fiscally responsible and live below their means and whatnot. But I'm curious to know if you've ever seen a transformation from a producing company of an owner who's like quite a consumer to someone who gets maybe more secure with maybe vacations or personal belongings, or boats or planes, becoming more secure there, and then saying, okay, I have a better handle on this thing. I don't have so much to prove. Let me instead, become less of a consumer and, take a more, I guess, modest lifestyle is kind of what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, I have not. Those are two lanes, and I kind of see folks, tending to stay in those lanes. What about you, though? Because you guys deal with, the most objective truth of any business, right? The numbers, the dollars. And so you would just assume that, to the extent you guys have insight into that business with this objective truth, that it would be an easy argument to make about, hey, you might want to think about slowing down. Otherwise, you guys could get caught unprepared down the road.
Yeah, I've had that conversation a handful of times, really, last couple of months, and with clients and non-clients, just people from around. You're right. The truth is in the numbers, right? And I think what I've learned, and that's the reason I asked the question, is because 4 years in of seeing really the truth, it gives me a sense of security knowing that a lifestyle of like heavy consumerism and keeping up with the Joneses and all of that is definitely available, but not necessary. Because I think like when you get past the business owner and you get past the fact that it's fun to win and it's fun to make money and it's fun to grow, and then turn around and understand like, yeah, but I haven't really enjoyed it, because I'm pushing so hard. And so in order to enjoy it, I'm just going to buy some fun things or take my family on amazing vacations, and yet they're still not fulfilled. For me, that's like the light bulb.
Yeah.
To say that, in my business and Attract and, some other things that we have going on, why can't I first focus on being a good steward of limiting consumerism, right? Or keeping up with the Joneses. Like, I already know that continuing to push more and make more and spend more isn't going to make me happier, because I've seen it play out and I've seen the truth. And so instead, I'm trying to focus on, my life and really trying to almost balance it a little bit more to where I'm not spending so much time pushing for growth while the thing that I'm trying to grow for, which is my family and my friends and all of the things outside of work, suffers. And so I've seen it both ways. I think that there's a step beyond business development or getting better at your business that spans into personal development that I think goes hand in hand with what it is that we're doing. And I'm really trying to get better at both.
Well, so the question you asked me, have you ever found yourself needing to have a tough conversation with someone who was, I guess, consumed with consumerism,
Yeah.
and sort of been able to guide them to another approach, another mindset? Has it worked?
I think it's a work in process. I think that I think addiction is a strong word, but I do think that there are just innate habits that certain people have that, are maybe a bit dangerous, from knowing or believing that, the next deal is going to make this thing right, or get me to where I need to be. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. I think that it's something that has to happen at a level beyond accountant to client relationship. I think that it could happen on a friend to friend relationship. And I think that's, the route that I would take if I was faced with it, in the future.
Yeah, because you almost are fighting some form of addiction. And I do think about, like, in the context of business, to the extent you can surround yourself with the right people, right? And those folks care about you and you care about them, that, it'd be nice to think that maybe those individuals would change just for the sake of their team, and what they've built. I don't know, but interesting question. That's why, I'm always excited to get anyone that I feel like doesn't have a grip on their numbers. They're flying blind a little bit and they just see it in the bank. I try to get them to sit down with you guys.
Yeah. I think, it's one of those things where, for what it is that we do, the numbers, anybody can read the numbers, but can you actually understand them and what they truly mean and what they indicate about where you're going?
Yeah, and make predictions, right?
Right. And I think that so many people don't understand how powerful those numbers, really can be.
Yeah. Yeah, and why is that? And I think maybe because there's not someone out there that they can trust the way, in the way that your clients, at least over time, grow to trust you guys. I think it's not every accountant out there that is looking to actually be part of the team for an organization the way you guys do.
And you just nailed it, because what you just described is why I was drawn to you to be our EOS implementer. Because you've got the receipts, like you've done the work, you've scaled a company, you've exited, you've invested in other companies, which I want to get to in here in a minute, but you've walked the walk. You didn't just go, pay for a certification and start coaching people, right? And I think that's the same for us. Like we are a scaling company. We're trying to get better at social media. We understand branding. We understand banking relationships. And we're building a team. And we're getting into new markets. And we're expanding our service offerings. And I think that innately people are drawn to that because, it's almost like if I wasn't doing any of that, how could I coach you on it? Yeah,
you can walk with them,
And I'm not saying I'm like a business coach by any means, but I have tried things that have failed. I spent $25K on ZoomInfo and didn't know how to do it. And ZoomInfo is this marketing platform, and and I've hired out subcontractors who were terrible. I've made errors on hiring and assessments, leading up to that hiring, and I've been a part of deals where appraisals came in far lower than they should have been, and it blew up the deal. And, and so I guess to that extent, I do have some war wounds, and I think that you do too.
Well, yeah. Now we're getting down to the real, heart of it. I think it's it's part of that process of growing in humility, understanding. I've always said the most dangerous guy in the room is the guy that doesn't know what he doesn't know, and living through life and specifically making the mistakes. Being able to get through the other side, recognize you made that mistake, don't keep making those again, right? And ultimately maybe crossing the finish line and in a way that looks like winning. That's what's attractive.
Mm-hmm. Is there a mistake that you've made as an entrepreneur that really sticks out to you over time, where you made the mistake, you paid the price, and then a year, 2 years, 10 years later, you're presented with a similar problem and you solved it differently because you knew how to fix it back when? Whether it might be around hiring or pricing or receivables collections or whatever it might be?
Yeah, I think we all make the mistake of, and I've heard you guys have the conversations about wanting the work, wanting that job so badly that you're willing to take it, at any cost. And did you have to do that? Did you really need that job that badly? Maybe it was that kind of a deal. But you do need to grow out of that habit of taking work on without making the profit that you really need to make. And obviously, having guys on your team that can look ahead and say, hey, look, the stakes are much higher now. We can't keep doing that. All those things come into play. I think that I didn't always hire folks. I was pretty good at hiring folks, whose strengths were my weaknesses. I didn't always understand the importance in that of surrounding myself with folks who are aligned with the same values that I had. As a bit of an optimist, I thought, well, if I just say it in the right way or show them, this clear path that I figured out for myself, they'll fall in line. And that doesn't usually happen. Mm-hmm. And it gets, and if you keep pushing it, it winds up getting kind of ugly. And there's conflict for reasons that should never have existed, because from the very beginning, they just really weren't right. Doesn't mean they're not right somewhere else. They just aren't right for you. I wish I had gotten better at finding the right folks who are aligned with my core values, earlier.
And so your role now as an EOS implementer, I guess real quick, for those who don't know, can you give us the quick and dirty on EOS?
Sure. It's an operating system, and not like in the same way you think about software. EOS EOS stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System, right? And it is a framework that you implement in your organization to get everybody on the same page, rowing in the same direction with respect to a vision and a plan to accomplish that vision. It creates a culture of accountability, and maybe the underpinning of all of that is because I work largely with the leadership teams for organizations. It creates a healthier team, teaching folks how to work together better, be open and honest.
So I alluded to this earlier in the conversation, but the thing that I love about you is you've got the receipts to prove it. Again, you've been an entrepreneur, you've been an investor, and now you're an implementer. You're a coach. Do you like that term, coach?
It winds up being kind of it's the context within which I'm a coach is different than a lot of other folks who say that they're coaches. So it just could create a little bit of confusion around it, but it is one aspect of what I wind up doing.
Well, let's go with implementer. Yeah. So to be a successful implementer, you've obviously done it, and then you've been trained with EOS, and I know you do continual education, and you're always like looking ahead of different tools that we can implement and things of that nature. But to be a successful implementer, in your experience, how would you grade the importance of your entrepreneurial history and then versus your knowledge of the content of EOS?
If to the extent that EOS is a journey, and look, my goal with every client is, I tell them it takes about 2 years to really nail this system down, so that you guys are humming and singing along with this operational system, for all the human energy in your organization. And the goal when we're done is for you to have a business that could run itself even if you aren't there, that's scalable. And so that's a journey, and it's hard, right? So to the extent that along that journey there are aspects that get folks stuck, to the extent that I've had experienced and made those mistakes, I'm able to approach with a nudge, maybe saying the right thing, helping folks understand, hey, look, I've been there. I know what you're going through, and we need to do it differently, right? And I want you to hear what I'm saying. The one thing is sometimes untangling a mess is complicated, and everything about EOS, they've worked, with thousands of companies, hundreds of thousands of hours to simplify everything, almost to the point where, don't take this the wrong way, but sometimes it's almost too simple, right? And then here you are wound up in this knot in your head because you've been fighting it and maybe couldn't step out or above and look down. And so my experience, I think, kind of helps them unwind that knot and kind of see, how simple really is better, and it's probably the right thing to do.
So let's go back in time to exiting Massengale's, right? Landscape was the, and so you exit the company, and what does the first year post exit look like for you? And then how did you get into, some of these investments and whatnot that you've made that, I think are a little tangential to what you used to do?
Yeah. So, at the time I sold, I was pretty burnt out, pretty frustrated. I ended a marriage. I had, through over the last 15 years, I had raised my daughter solo. I was very consumed with building a great business in the way I felt like, what I'd come to understand that looked like, and some aspects of that weren't working. Probably in the 20 years I had my business, I'd never taken more than a couple of weeks off. Not recommended. And so then in 2016, our entire operation flooded, the buildings, the equipment, everything. And later that summer, I lost my brother. And then there these guys were knocking to, make me an offer that I couldn't refuse. So I was burnt out. I was tired. Sold the business, and heck, I spent the next 5 years just kind of almost recovering from that. I didn't have a single hobby, so I taught myself how to cook. Did some traveling. Managed to find my soulmate along the way. But I will say this. We went and we lived in New York for a little while, but when I got back, I remember just hit me like a ton of bricks. You go from hero to zero in the room, if you will. Those things that will ultimately burn you out, everybody calling you, needing, to help make this decision or that, that feeling of being productive, that, your existence matters, that kind of goes away. And it is a bit of an adjustment. I kind of filled that time with travel, like I say, and doing some stuff that were long overdue for me to do. But I think for anyone that's built and made like we are, that entrepreneurial spirit, that eventually it wasn't burnt and gone forever. It came back, and I got ready to feel like I was making a difference. And that's really what led me to the EOS franchise, being an implementer there, and then ultimately, making some different investments and getting involved in some startup businesses.
Yeah. So can you just maybe at a high level talk about those and what really drew you to those opportunities?
So sure, I had a consultant that I had used in my business. His name is Kevin Keogh, and he's the guy that really taught me how to think about what building a successful landscape business looked like. Certainly with respect to the numbers, dealing in the currency of hours, and that's essentially what you're selling is your time. So super influential. Well, he in 2015, two things significant happened for him. He was diagnosed with stage 4 colorectal cancer, so essentially ending his consulting career. And he was kind of an icon in the industry. He'd really established himself as a trusted advisor to landscapers. But he took that and he leveraged it into an enterprise software startup. It was him and another guy. He took care of the sales, and I was fortunate enough to be one of the folks he asked to put some money up, and it was kind of wildly successful, like a 50x return, and that certainly whets your appetite to try and find other opportunities to invest in. And it was fun. I've always seen software, the right kind of software, as a springboard to X, whatever time, it depends on how good the software is, but to, 10X, 20X, 100X your business. There's a lot of bad software out there. Yeah. So it was fun being part of at the time, what happened to be a good software, and the deals that I'm involved with now, are aimed at bringing something to the industry that it needs, that is kind of struggled without, and trying to make a difference, trying to use software in the right way as the right kind of tool.
Mm-hmm. So, going back to EOS and your role as the implementer, and again, being in the room with people who are getting vulnerable, how has it been for you from like a rewarding perspective of like celebrating the wins, being sad about the losses, like really getting, I'm not going to say emotionally involved, but like, for me, I am pumped up when my clients win, and I'm sad when they lose. So what's that been like for you, kind of being like on the outside, but still on the inside?
Hard, man. And it's watching folks kind of struggle. And this is a really big part of being a successful implementer, is having the answer and not giving it, but asking the right question and leading folks down that path, watching them make the wrong decision, make those mistakes, learn, but there's no greater feeling than when they come back to you and say, now I get it. Thankfully, no one's ever said, why the heck didn't you tell me this? I'd have to tell them, well, I did. You just weren't ready to hear it. But it's amazing to be part of that. It's a gift.
Yeah. I think that's my favorite thing about what it is that we do, is being able to experience those wins and nobody likes to experience losses, but you also like to experience the rebuilds from the losses and the lessons learned.
Isn't that part of it though, too?
Yeah.
And that's the rich part, You know, those are the things that you tell the stories about years later. Those tough lessons that you had to learn, kind of like raising kids, you know. You can't save them from every, fall or scrape or mistake that they're going to make. You just want to kind of keep them between the ditches on the right path, be a reminder, poke them when they need poking. It's just like that in the room working with my clients.
Mm-hmm. And so what's next for you, Toby? I mean, are you continuing to grow out as an EOS implementer? I know you've got a young family, and what's like the next 5 years look like for you?
So, much like we talked about earlier, taking those jobs on that maybe you shouldn't have in the early days, but you were so eager to grow. I've been doing the EOS thing long enough to have a good feel about, what the right client looks like for me. I kind of model them after you guys.
Oh, appreciate that.
Yeah. So, I'd like to have a handful of businesses that are eager, growing, want to learn, that, is what makes it an enjoyable endeavor for me. We've just started, so just to kind of date myself a little bit, when I started my business, there was no internet and there were no cell phones. And over time, right, as those things became, commodities and the smartphone came into existence, I just remember how amazing it was to be able to go out on a job site, take a picture, and immediately send that picture to someone and have a conversation or a text about it. And I remember saying, this technology is going to change our business forever in a way that we never thought possible. And it certainly has made an impact, but it hasn't changed it in the way that I thought it would. To a large degree, working out in the field is still as hard as it ever was, and taking 1,000 pictures and sending those pictures out in text messages, it doesn't make the work that folks do easier. It just makes it faster, and in those ways maybe a little harder, right? Because it's flying at you now. Folks expect, talking about your customers, they expect more of an immediate. It's responsive. It's just faster, and there aren't tools out there, the right tools to effectively support what those guys are doing in the field. And so we've started a software company. We've got an app we've designed that aims to at least 5x what those guys in the field do, and pretty excited about it.
That is exciting. Well, Toby, as we wrap up here, I just want to express my gratitude for you as a friend and as our implementer. EOS has been a game changer for our company, and we're obviously big proponents of it. It's in our email signature. It's on our website. I tell everybody I can about the good news of EOS. And about how great you've been, to work with us. And so I just wanted to thank you for being a great implementer, a great friend, and for being a great podcast guest.
Sure, man. The pleasure and honor is mine, John.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
All right, brother.
Catch you next time.